how emerging personal technologies can empower patients with chronic illnesses. My name is Jelena, I'm with KPMG Germany, and we consult public sector clients, for example, hospitals and healthcare insurances. And maybe you had a chance to listen to the talks yesterday, because for me there was an overarching topic, patient centricity. And everyone who listened to those talks know what I mean with centricity, because really, so many solutions on the market are not really patient-centric. We really have to talk to patients. We have to go out and talk and listen to patients, what they really need. And that's actually what I did as a market researcher before I joined KPMG. I spent hours and hours talking to patients, talking to physicians, listening to their stories, listening to their pain points along their patient journey. So, and this is where emerging technologies come in and maybe can help us to tackle one of those challenges along the journeys. So, this is what I want to talk about with these three panelists here, Karen, Philipp, and María. Let's start with a quick introduction round. Karen, who are you and how does personal technology play a role for you?
Yes, for sure. Hi everyone, my name is Karen. I'm part of the Flying Health team. We are an ecosystem for next generation healthcare. So we try to work with as many stakeholders in the healthcare system as possible, always around questions of how the healthcare system may develop, what does that mean for their business models, and how can we support them in that. And because we work with all the different stakeholders, we also look at personal tech or digital health solutions from different angles. So on the one hand, from the provider side, working with startups, trying to implement such solutions in the different markets, and thereby also getting an understanding of where they come from, what is possible from a technological point of view, but also with, for example, pharma companies or healthcare providers, supporting them in, for example, finding solutions that they can offer for their patients. And that, of course, also gives us insights into what is needed on the other end and what are the requirements there. So different facets, which I think we will also take a look at during the ongoing discussion.
Thank you so much. Philipp.
Yes, hi everyone, my name is Philipp. I work as an investment advisor to the EIC fund, which is a fund which is 100% backed by the European Commission. And within the course of the last, I would say 2-3 years, we became the largest and one of the most active deep tech VCs in Europe. So overall, we have a capital to deploy of roughly 4 billion euros until 27. We have roughly over 300 portfolio companies to date, and each year we are looking to add roughly another 100 companies, so we will end up with roughly 700 companies in our portfolio. The largest part and the largest single vertical in that portfolio is actually the healthcare sector, mostly because it's strongly aligned with the EU policies, as well as the impact that the EU is trying to seek, but also obviously it fits the criteria of deep tech, since it's a very capital intense, research intense area. So I would say we have quite a very good overview of what is actually happening in the space, what are the trends happening there. Personally, I'm just passionate and excited about everything healthcare related. I mean, we heard already some great ideas here, and there are great minds trying to solve pressing issues. And my last message for now is here to all the startups. We want you to apply for the EIC Accelerator, particularly the ones which are based in the CEE and the Baltics, because that is a region that is still underrepresented in the fund. So go online, check out the EIC Accelerator and apply for funding there.
So startups, you heard Philipp. Check out the website. Now, María.
Hello, everybody. I'm María. I'm the CEO and founder of EndoGene.Bio. EndoGene.Bio is a biotech that looks for biomarkers in female health, and we use menstrual blood as our source. And we are a seed stage company, and before that I used to work for the pharmaceutical company called Merck in fertility, where we actually developed not only drugs, but also several technologies that can help and accompany the patient in the journey. So that's, I guess, the role we have to play in empowering patients with personal tech.
Thank you. So now, before we take a deep dive into this topic, let's define personal tech. So what exactly is personal tech for you? Karen, what would you say?
Yeah, I think, again, there are different ways to look at it. I think what it is most prominent for me, and also in the work that we do, is really tech that supports patients on their individual patient journeys, specifically in chronic diseases, in which, unfortunately, they're in for the long run, and it's a long period of time that continues to provide challenges. And personal tech, in my perception, is there to ease that journey in different parts or with different approaches, but always focusing, among other things, on the patient and their individual challenges.
Do you want to add anything?
Yes, I think in line what Karen said, I think it's, from my point of view, also anything, may be any device, may be hardware, may be software, which is basically supporting the patients, empowering them, but also helping ultimately the healthcare system in, let's say, the overload and burden that the medical staff has. It's something that is capital intensive to develop. It's something that requires clinical trials, CE marking, FDA approval. That's personal tech from a professional point of view for me.
Okay, Maria, how about you?
I think the description has been very comprehensive. I just want for us to not forget that actually there was something that was already there for a long time. It was many of these diagnostic devices that we have in the market and that we're working on. This is another form of personal tech that it often sounds less sexy because it has to go through all of the regulatory approvals, etc., but that empowers patients, especially, and we will see endometriosis is our first use case, and the patients have a lot of opportunities to follow the medical pathway and everything that brings them back, starting with appropriate diagnosis that you can do at home or taking it into your own hands, is personal tech to me.
Okay, so a lot of potential here. Why do we even need those technologies? What are the challenges we're facing right now in the healthcare system that force us even to use those technologies? Let's start with the patient's perspective. Maria.
Okay. I think in a case like ours, right, endometriosis or female health in general, these are things that take a long time because we don't have very strong molecular markers or endpoints. And so this means we rely a lot on pain and symptoms. And so this means that unless we create the technology to quantify some of these things, we are left with a lot of consultations where somebody has to interpret whether your pain belongs to one specific disease or other. And in gynecological health, unfortunately, most of them look pretty similar.
Okay, so that's from the patient's perspective. Maybe, Karen, you can add the healthcare provider's perspective. What are the challenges here?
Yeah, I think that's a topic that we've probably already heard a lot of over the last 2 days. I mean, everyone's aware that there's going to be a massive staff shortage in hospital and practices among the healthcare providers in general. And I think personal tech also is a way to help mitigate these challenges and address these shortages by supporting physicians, enabling them to free up capacities and be able to focus more on patients in higher need, for example. So yeah, trying to, I think you also just mentioned it, to generate efficiencies within the system and thereby also provide relief to the healthcare providers and to the staff demands that we're going to have.
Okay, so needs on both ends, patients and healthcare providers. Philipp, do you have anything to add? What are other challenges we have to face, especially for chronic disease management?
I think the Google keynote yesterday said it all. I mean, we have those underlying mega trends. The world's population is growing. So is the world's population aging. and despite many efforts on many fronts, chronic diseases are on the rise. So, and particularly when we look at what is happening in Europe and in the US, and which was aggravated during COVID, is what Karen also said, there is a shortage of medical staff. And so the quality of care and the patient experience is decreasing, and also the risk of human error in that, in misdiagnosis, in mistreatment or maltreatment is actually increasing. And so we basically have no other alternative than looking at what can personal tech do to bridge this gap in prevention, in diagnosis, in monitoring. So we have no other choice, basically, and that's what we are looking at from a portfolio perspective. What are the solutions out there that we could invest in and that we could support in order to bridge this gap?
Okay, so let's make it really clear now and really tangible. Let's bring some examples. How does personal technology help the patient along the patient journey, starting with the diagnostics? Maria, I think you want to show a slide, right? Can we have that slide, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so to make this tangible, what you see here on the screen is actually the patient journey of a woman with endometriosis. And so these are all chances, and sorry, I'm going to stand up, but these are all chances that the patient has every time you see one of these back and forth, that she falls off this medical pathway. And so everything that is a technology that allows her to get back in is a patient that we are saving. And as you can see there, there's a lot of self-referral, or actually referrals through referrals, that we need to avoid. No? And personal tech is whatever empowers these people to shorten this. No? And for example, our specific role at EndoGene is actually to provide markers, and it's an in vitro diagnosis. So you do part of the process at home, and you actually get a report with your doctor, and is to allow all of that part that comes after the family doctor to be reduced, or the general gynecologist. So then what you have is a much shorter pathway. So that's how we see the difference between sort of a today ecosystem and how it would look like once you have specific molecular markers, right, that allow you to move past the symptomatic-based treatment and diagnosis, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, really impressive numbers here. The diagnostics takes 7 years. We can shorten that time with new technologies. That's really, really promising. Let's move on to the treatment phase. Karen, what are examples here? How can personal technologies help? Can patients help here?
I think it would even also fit into the journey that Maria just described, because I think wherever personal tech helps to collect more data on symptoms, on disease development for individual patients, it also helps providers to make better treatment decisions, diagnose diseases earlier, and thereby again to free up capacities on their end, or basically just support them in their therapeutic decisions, which then ultimately, of course, also benefit the patients, because they do not have to go through 7 years of being referred from doctor to doctor, but hopefully diagnosis can happen earlier. More specific treatment choices can be made, and maybe also speaking about personalized medicine, the right treatment options can be made earlier for individual patients, based on the data that they collect through personal tech applications.
Okay, so really personalized treatment here. What about the monitoring? Philipp, you have also some examples for monitoring technologies.
Yes, I think it's also important to make the bridge. Prevention is one big task of personal tech. You obviously want to have solutions to prevent the patient actually of getting sick. The next question, however, is, okay, what if the patient is sick and has a chronic disease, and how do you deal with it? What are the solutions to basically help the patient to take a little bit back control of his life, to avoid unnecessary clinical visits, but also to take away burden from the from the medical stuff by doing, let's say, routine administrative tasks and not being able to focus on the tasks that actually matter, like taking care of the patients that need it at the moment. So we have a large portfolio with super interesting names there. Obviously, we heard yesterday a lot of, and today, a lot of very great and exciting ideas. The two that I highlight, I'm personally a bit biased since it's years I was actively working on, or am actively working on. So yeah, if I'm too excited, sorry for that. But two concrete examples is, one is a company called, that we invested in, is a company called Blue Drop Medical. It's an Irish-based company, and they have developed a scanner, a foot scanner, to prevent the creation of diabetic foot ulcers. It's a very nasty disease, so basically once you have it, it takes up to 6 months, sometimes up to 12 to treat it, to take care of it. It means you have to go to the clinic on a regular side, you know, get it treated, but even once it's healed, there is a high chance that you get it back if it's not diagnosed early enough. And at the same time, in 25% of the cases, there is a chance that once you have this disease, you actually need to get an amputation. So as you can imagine, it's horrible for the patient, but it's also horrible for the healthcare system and the overall cost. So what has the company developed? It's the world's first foot scanner, so to speak. It looks like a bathroom scale. You step on it once a day. It's super easy to use, and basically it takes a scan of your feet. At the same time, it measures the temperature, and the results are then diagnosed. Of course, I don't like to use the word AI powered, heard it too much, but with the support of algorithms are diagnosed, the physician gets the results and ultimately says, okay, do I need to check the patient in-house or not? So obviously, as you can imagine, if you have this, it's efficiency for everyone involved, and the patient doesn't need to go to the clinic, and as it's easy to use and compliant, safe, so to speak, yeah, you just get your life back. And this is one example of monitoring. A second example, which I think is revolutionizing a little bit on what is happening in the space, is a Spanish-based company called Tucuvi. I think Marcos yesterday also gave a pitch. What is the company doing? They are developing a software to automatize clinical follow-up calls. So ultimately, and in very simple terms speaking, you as a patient, you talk to a virtual nurse in a human-like manner. So sometimes you don't even realize, I talked to her, and you don't even realize, if you wouldn't know it, that it's actually a bot. And what does it help? It helps the medical staff basically to scale that activity. They don't have to engage in routine medical follow-up questions with patients. They can spend the staff to use their skills, basically help the patients that need it. And on the other hand, the patient doesn't need to go to the clinic, but also he is hurt because he's, okay, you talk to a virtual nurse, but you don't talk maybe to an overworked medical healthcare staff, which maybe just do a check on, okay, how do you do? Maybe they miss some information because they are overburdened and they need to jump to the next one. So all those, let's say, solutions are a very good example of what is happening in the space, and hopefully what will revolutionize the space to the better for everyone involved.
Cool. Thank you very much for those examples. I think it makes it really tangible, and it's really promising how technologies can really empower the patients along their journey. Now, are there any other overarching benefits for the healthcare system? When I think about patient safety, compliance, etc., do you have any other benefits for the healthcare system that are the results of using those technologies?
Maybe one side benefit coming from the pharma side of things is that all of these things that starts as personal tech to help the patients then can also help in designing better clinical trials, because suddenly you have all of these surrogate endpoints that allow you to follow up the patient, and not only does it help you when you're launching or when you're evaluating why your drug had an effect or not, but you can also track alongside. You have problems with, for example, adherence, compliance. You have sometimes subpopulations of patients that respond and you don't know why. All of these data points that you're collecting along the way can actually help you understand, and it can mean the difference between sometimes saving a drug or not, because you can argue that those patients that responded for a specific characteristic.
And maybe building on that, I think data in general is a very positive, or can be a very positive side effect of personal tech. I also heard it in one of the discussions yesterday, the argument that basically to provide better therapies, better care, you need to be closer to the patient and also basically be with the patient as much as possible. And I think personal tech is, or enables exactly this, that healthcare providers are able to interact with patients in their homes. They are able to read out data that has been collected 24/7, of course, all within the framework of data privacy. But in general, it helps to create a much better understanding of the patient, their habits, lifestyles, their individual disease pathways. And that ultimately should also be, leveraging better or enabled to provide better care and better therapies.
Yeah, maybe just to build on top of that, to sum up, I think it should the benefit of those solutions are, they are, as we mentioned before, without alternative, because we have this shortage of medical staff, so we need something to counteract that and to meet the increasing demand. So this is without alternative, but the benefits are definitely that the quality of care is increased, that the human error in that overload is decreased, and that there is an increase again in efficiency in the healthcare system. So that all of it, I think, makes the overall patient journey and patient experience to the better. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, because there's one stakeholder, I think, which we haven't looked at that much yet, and that are the payers. So I think also from a cost perspective, you mentioned prevention, and I think there are lots of ways in which personal tech can also, provide benefits for those that are paying for the therapies, because as much as we can avoid indications through personal tech or identify them earlier, but also ensure that, also coming back to the clinical trials, that the right patients receive the right therapies and don't have to go through as many lines as they currently do. That all saves cost or helps to save cost, and therefore also releases that burden, basically.
Okay, so many benefits here. But let's face it, let's make a reality check. There are barriers when it comes to implementing those technologies into that patient journey. For example, Karen, if someone says, what does it mean for the role of the physicians in the future if patients get this kind of power through this technology? What does it mean for the physicians? Become physicians irrelevant in the future, or what would you say?
Yeah, I think that's also something that came up repeatedly throughout the discussions over these last 2 days. I think this is one of the biggest, or at least in my perception, it's one of the biggest fears among physicians, apparently, that AI or other technologies, personal tech, is kind of decreasing the role that they have or the importance that they have. But I think it was mentioned a couple of times. These technologies are really meant to support physicians, to help them focus on also what they studied for and what they are supposed to do. And work with patients, focus on patients, release administrative work, or make it easier to gather data. So no, it doesn't make doctors irrelevant or decreases their importance. It's just meant to support them and help them provide even better care than they currently do, given the constraints in terms of staff and cost.
Okay, so there's hope for physicians in the future. Maria, what if someone says patients don't even have the skills to use those technologies? Maybe they don't know how to use it. They don't know what happens with their data. They don't know. Maybe they don't have the ability to use that. Maybe they have disabilities, for example, chronic diseases. Many people don't have the ability to use it physically. What would you say? What are the possible solutions there?
I think that's a misconception, and in female health it happens a lot, where sometimes we treat women like they're 5 years old, And actually, these women come into the clinic super well informed, sometimes to the point where they've researched like papers and stuff. So I doubt that they're not able to use some of this, even when they have chronic conditions and that can limit your physical capabilities, right? I think one note of caution to all of these companies that are doing everything virtually is that we cannot remove the contact with the clinician or between the clinician and the patient. So always one safeguard is to save a few moments where that interaction exists. That's for me key when you're developing these technologies. Don't forget that a lot of the treatment starts with trusting your physician, and this can only happen when they spend time together. So some things, I like a sentence that says, you invest in people and you're efficient with things. This is something that we shouldn't forget. And so looping back to this, personal tech will help in removing the low value add activities of the physicians and focusing on the high. Same for the patient. So if I don't have to be explaining everything that hurts, etc., but that is really automatically done, and then I can focus on discussing together the paths forward, this is a lot more value add. And that's how I see it. So never, my answer to you in a nutshell is, don't remove a point where the physician and the patient can be in touch together.
But I think maybe if I can add to that, I think what you mentioned in the beginning is also playing into that, like the patient centricity, because I think there's some truth in it, in that tech solutions can be too challenging or too complicated or not patient-centric enough for patients to use it. So I think this also creates kind of a request for companies building these solutions to make them as intuitive and as easy to access and use as possible, so that it doesn't create a barrier. It doesn't even evoke the impression that it's too complicated to use for both patients but also physicians, I guess.
Okay, so there are answers to that question. Philipp, of course, there is the cost question. I mean, you just tackled that. Who pays for all the development of those technologies? Who pays for the creating the awareness and education? Who pays for all that? I mean, of course, we have all local differences in payer structures and stuff like that, but maybe you can also look at the international side of this. What are possibilities to pay those kind of developments?
I think the first step is that, yes, particularly when we talk about hardware, personal tech, which is hardware related, so medtech companies, cost of development is high. It's capital intensive, it's research intensive, you need to pay the people, you need to pay for the regulatory pathway, which takes long. So it costs a lot, that is a fact. So the question in a first step should be, okay, how, also for the companies, but also for, I think, everyone involved in this ecosystem, how do you get those companies funded? So this is the first important question to ask. So when we look what is happening in Europe, a lot has happened in the VC ecosystem, I would say, over the past years and over the past decade. And if we look in specific in the healthcare and medtech sector, there are a lot of national initiatives, particularly Ireland is quite strong there. France is also pushing quite strong, so the ecosystems are developing. EIC Accelerator as such is obviously also an EU-wide initiative, which is helping, so it's good. But it's still a lot to catch up with the US, because if you are a medtech company, most of those companies, in order to fully commercialize their product and go to the market, they need to raise a Series A, Series B of 20, 30, sometimes 40 million in order to develop that. And the issue then in Europe you have is that we have a lot of VCs and more coming, but many of them have regional boundaries. So, okay, you might have a French VC which is not allowed to invest in Ireland, for example. So there is a certain, let's say, barrier to scaling because the companies might not get the funding in Europe. So I think that is one of the issues that needs to be tackled. And the second thing, obviously, even if you're a company and you get the funding, I think the focus of a company developing a product should always be, is there a reimbursement for my product already in place? Or do I need to, let's say, seek reimbursement for that, or do I have a service that is so much added value that someone, let's say a healthcare provider, is willing to pay for that nonetheless, because the gains for them are so evident that they don't even need a reimbursement. And I think those are the questions that it's important to consider when you think about the capital intensiveness of this industry.
Yeah, interesting thoughts here. I think it's especially important for rare diseases. Where does the money come from to address those issues? So we heard a lot about those examples along the patient journey. Let's wrap it up a bit. So in a few sentences, what would you say are the success factors for those kind of technologies empowering patients with chronic illnesses? Let's start maybe with Maria. What are your success factors?
I can think of three. The first one is pay a lot of attention to your patient journey. So when you're designing personal tech, it needs to be something that fits into that journey. The second is it needs to fit into also the medical guidelines. That's something we forget because we think, well, we're not going to have a claim of diagnosis. If a physician doesn't endorse it, it's going to be hard, even if the patients are pushing for it. The system in which we work, because your payer is not the patient mostly, is the physician recommending it, and the authorities will ask the physicians and the physicians associations to emit guidelines. So don't forget about the physicians' buy-in. And the third one, and a success factor that is harder, is figure out who pays. And on this, we need to lobby, I think, especially in Europe, because unfortunately, the system that we have for medical devices today doesn't match the system that we have for drugs. In drugs, it's a lot more transparent, a lot more centralized, and in Europe, it's still notified bodies driven, and I think the new regulations make it more stringent. We have to go through them. I think patients deserve the safety profiles that they are asking for. We don't want these scandals with the breast implants anymore, but they need to then compensate these efforts. And so for that, I think we need to do strong lobbying.
Okay, thank you. Karen, what are these success factors?
Actually, I would go with those as well, probably. I think the only thing I would like to add is that it's probably never too early to think about these factors and these questions, because what we often see with startups or companies like developing these solutions is that they have a perfectly working product that is very top-notch from a technological point of view, but they haven't thought about how to really get access to the market, how they fit into the patient journey, whether they fit into the way things work in a practice or in a hospital. And I think as soon as you already have a product, it's difficult to kind of fit it in from the back door. So yeah, basically addressing all of these questions from day one, I think is maybe the fourth success factor in my view.
Thank you. And Philipp?
I think two topics on top, and this is, I think, from an investor's point of view, very relevant whenever we look at the product and at the potential solution. As good as it is, particularly when it's in the, let's say, remote monitoring area or something that the patient has to use at home, it should be foolproof. It should be, the patient compliance should be ensured, because the data that you get from it is only as good as the patient who is using it. If you don't use it correct, you will not get the right data, and that means you will get a wrong diagnosis or you need to go again. So basically, it's useless if that's not the case. So those products need to be really 100% foolproof and easy to use. I think that should be always in the mind of the companies developing such product. And obviously, also as we heard the pitches yesterday, these days everything is data-driven, everything is AI-powered. So the companies also need to ensure a trustful handling of those data. So there needs to be a build-up in trust that this is very sensitive information about individuals, that whoever sees that, how this is handled, that this is basically protected in the right way. And I think those are the important factors to consider on top.
So just a quick comment on this AI buzz that we have. That's all super nice, but when you deal with regulatory authorities, they want to know what's inside. You cannot tell them, I put this in, magic happens, and then it's out. So it's nice for the pitches, but then when you have to get your regulatory approval, they need to know what's inside. So design it in a way that is not a complete black box, because otherwise you will struggle. Also, you will struggle to partner with pharma on this.
Thank you. So just one sentence each. What would be a wish for the future of chronic disease management if there was a fairy that could fulfill one wish for you? Just one sentence each. Karen, what would you say?
Mine would actually be that there is more focus on prevention and that personal tech is being used for that area, because I think that's the biggest lever, in my view, to improve care.
Thank you, Philipp.
Easy integration of whatever is out there.
Okay. María.
Let's implement value-based reimbursement.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, you three. And yeah, now we are happy to answer some questions. If there's time left, there's no time left.
Unfortunately, there is no time.
Oh, no.
All I can say, well, good luck explaining to the authorities what's inside a generative language model. That might take some time, but still, thank you so very much. If we have one super quick question, we can squeeze it in. Otherwise, please talk to our panelists during the break. No? Thank you so very much again, Karen, Philipp, María, Jelena. Thank you for engaging moderation.